Welcome back to another episode of Prime Time. The team lists are out and it's prime time to talk about sport. I've got Nick beside me, Jaden on the bench. We always say it each week, entertaining week of sport and entertainment. Over the weekend, we took a shit on some F1 fans last week.
We said there were fake F1 fans, but there turned out to be some real ones in Melbourne this
There were
weekend.
over 440,000 fans turned out over the 4 days. Ended in a bit of a controversial fashion. Max Verstappen gets the win. What happened there, Jay?
Mate, most red flags in a F1 race history. So
What does that mean?
three red flags. It means every red flag, it means the accident's deemed too dangerous to continue the race and all cars go back into the garage.
And they got to do just a lap around.
Yeah, and then
he'll take the W. That's all that matters.
It was an anticlimactic way for Red Bull to get the win. But when we talk about entertainment, WrestleMania was a massive success over the weekend. Over 161,000 fans in the SoFi Stadium. It was all over Twitter. 2-night event. I thought it was really well done.
I was very happy with the result.
Roman Reigns, we're the ones, got the victory. But bigger news to come out of that was Monday they announced there's going to be a joint UFC and WWE merger under one company. Endeavor buys WWE for $9.3 billion.
And for those that don't know, Ari Gold from Entourage does head the Endeavor Group, and they did purchase WWE for, I think it was $9.3 billion, which is massive. I think that's one of the biggest valuations for a company, I think, ever for a sports entertainment company.
So with UFC and WWE combined under one umbrella, it's a $21 billion sports conglomerate that's really going to take over America for live sports and entertainment, which is pretty crazy when you think about it.
Which is cool now because you're going to see a lot more UFC stars probably going into the WWE and maybe even some WWE stars fighting in the octagon, which would be cool.
You saw some crossover. I think Conor McGregor tweeted out, it's good to see WWE UFC partnership. He had a UFC belt and a WWE belt over each shoulder. You've already seen the crossover. Ronda Rousey crossover. Brock Lesnar's gone in and out. CM Punk had a failed UFC career.
Cain Velasquez, don't forget about him.
I don't know if we're allowed to talk about him on YouTube, but no, we love Cain. But I'm just saying you're going to see a lot of crossover. You know, George Masvidal's or some people in the UFC go over to...
It's
Jorge Masvidal. Go over into the WWE and it's maybe a different career path now.
Well, you see, once personalities like Covington, maybe even Khabib, once they get to that upper end of their career, they'll transition to WWE and, add an extra 5 to 10 years of their career.
Khabib doing it.
No,
I guarantee,
don't think he can cut a
guarantee once Russia's probably in the good books of the US, Khabib will be wrestling at WrestleMania.
Someone like Conor McGregor, who already brought in the WWE spirit into the UFC. Look at what he's done there.
He's a Ric Flair of UFC.
Yeah,
imagine Conor as the undisputed WWE champ.
And that brings us to our favourite segment of the show, our fan comments, whether it's on TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube. We have our fan question of the week. Jaden, what's the fan question for this week?
Fan question for the week's from Marco Signorelli, and it is UFC or WWE, which is more popular?
UFC or WWE, which is more popular?
I've got to go with UFC. I think straight off the bat, just hearing the question, you just say UFC. Especially in our demographic, it's taken over. Everyone I know personally, and even probably as a wider Twitter audience on social media, they tune into the UFC more than they do WWE. WWE is an older product now. It's too old.
That's probably the stupidest thing you ever said. Yes, it's an older product. It's generational. It covers my dad's generation. You could talk about Hulk Hogan. You could talk about Vince McMahon, Stone Cold, The Rock. They create stars. Not only that, they have more of a social following. Instagram, YouTube. They have more of TV views across it. They're both global products. Around the world, they got bigger distribution. Of course, it's WWE. They speak to more demographics. I don't care about your demographic. They speak to kids. They speak to our demographic. It really is a limitless product.
Looking at the head-to-head matchup, the barometers of success. YouTube following, WWE wins. Instagram following, UFC wins. TikTok following, WWE wins. Revenue per year, UFC wins by about 100 million per year. Valuation, they just got sold. WWE's valuation was 6 billion, got sold at 9 billion, so valuation of 9 billion. UFC's is 12 billion. They got a $3 billion.
What does valuation have to do with anything?
It's a barometer of success.
What is more popular? What's more of a known name in households around the world? It's WWE.
Historically, WWE is, but UFC has taken over.
Who are the latest WWE stars?
Roman Reigns had a 945. But you still talk about John Cena.
Doesn't
The Rock
matter.
is a WWE star, people know. If you went to homes around the world and say, what is more known? It's WWE. What's more marketable?
UFC.
What's distributed more? They produce, I think it's 7 hours of content, new content a week, distributed around the world. billions of views on YouTube, more
Yeah,
subscribers,
UFC
more
is similar.
followers.
UFC have like 50 events a year.
US,
12 main events, but
WWE has more viewership because they put on more events. It doesn't mean viewership per event. UFC trumps it massively.
Bro, UFC probably can't be shown in certain countries. They don't have free-to-air distribution like they do. WWE is shown Saudi Arabia, India, across weekly. Or across,
It
it's
doesn't matter.
distributed
Especially-
worldwide.
okay.
They're both global companies. And if
Especially-
you had to say what is more popular globally, it's WWE hands down.
As a potential investor, the valuation for UFC is so much higher because it's going to
No
be
one cares
much
about
more
your
popular.
potential investors. The question is, what is more popular? And if you had to say globally, what is more popular? Who does more European tours? What is distributed more? What's more accessible? It's WWE. Don't be stupid.
I beg to
Chat
differ.
GPT is saying that while UFC is growing in popularity, WWE is still generally considered.
If
more
AI is
popular.
saying it, it's true.
ChatGPT is prior to 2021, so post 2021, UFC has grown in popularity
Yeah,
much
UFC
more.
did
If you
have
want to
their
talk
big
about
WWE.
sales and all that bullshit, I think they make just as much revenue as the UFC as well.
I'm
And
just
they
saying-
do far more. They'd have far more overheads. Live production each week. Live shows in
They
each
pay,
town
they pay
each
their
week.
wrestlers.
Yeah, they actually pay their wrestlers multi-million dollars.
From looking at it, UFC just bought WWE. It's the bigger product,
UFC
bigger
didn't buy
brand.
it, Endeavor bought it, mate. So your argument's stupid. I think it's WWE just based on viewers and numbers alone across social media.
I'd love to see what the comments say.
Well, I want to go into our rugby league preview of the week. We always do this. We pick our team and player of the week. Nick, what was your player of the week?
It's review, first of all.
Rugby league review. What was your team of the week? Let's start with teams.
My team of the week was the Warriors, coming back from 20 points down. Unbelievable. I can't believe that they actually were able to pull that off at Shark Park. I thought once the Sharks were up 20-0, they were home. I had my money on them. I think they cost everyone their multi this week. It was disgusting.
20-0 after 18 minutes.
I mean, I picked the try scorers.
You could look at some of the highlights. Like, no one saw the Warriors coming back 20 points, down.
Yeah, but it's it's just something that happens in sport, happens in rugby league, and I think everyone's high on the Warriors now. I'm going to put the house on them to lose next week because there's no way they're winning that many games in a row.
What do you think about the penalty at the end?
Oh, a bit rubbish. I mean, yes, Moylan probably came in a bit late. I don't know who they called the penalty on,
Yeah.
but it was rubbish. And it was just a diff 2 points, dirty way to end the game.
Yeah, I feel like referees put their whistles in their pockets when there's big calls to be made or it's in the dying seconds of the game or dying minutes of the game. So if you're going to call a penalty, they got to be pretty confident it's a penalty. There wasn't like Graham Annesley coming out saying it should have been a penalty, so I'm happy with the call. Yeah. My team of the week is the Melbourne Storm. Still a somewhat depleted team. No Jerome Hughes in this week. Nelson's still out. And they got a pretty convincing win. And that talks to the professionalism of them. They still look like they're attacking pretty well. I feel like their backs are now coming into their own. That rookie back, Warbrick is starting to come into it. Powerhouse, some tries over in the corner. So I think team of the week's got to go to Melbourne Storm. They're just showing the class and professionalism.
They're just too clinical, especially for a team like South Sydney that rely on maybe one player, Latrell, to get into the game and break it open for him. They shut him down. They didn't let him get into the game. Defensively, they were just a step above what you'd seen in the first 4 rounds of the NRL. And Melbourne Storm, under Craig Bellamy, you just know they're going to get it right. And I was happy to get my tip on Melbourne.
I want to ask, do you think Latrell's doing enough as a fullback? I feel like the last 2 weeks he's going to be MIA. Like if you compare his game to a Tedesco's always getting in there for carries. He's everywhere around the ball. Watching the last 2 weeks of Souths, Latrell hasn't injected himself enough into the game like he did on the back end of last year.
As much as I like seeing Latrell take a hit up, it's just not his type of play. He's not as fit as Tedesco, as Dylan Edwards, sorry. But once he gets the ball in his hands, he's creating an overlap. He's setting up tries. Okay, maybe he had a subpar game last week against Melbourne, but it's not going to be consistent. And I'm scared for the Bulldogs this week who have to verse Latrell. He's going to have the game of his life. That much media having a bloody bite at him. He's going to set up 2-3 tries, probably score a try himself.
Well, if there's a game to do it, it's against the Bulldogs.
Good Friday matchup. He's going to clean up.
Do you think he's a waste though at fullback, like kick returns and everything else, or would you play him in the centres?
I wouldn't play him in the centre because that would probably restrict him more. But just find ways to inject him into the game. Whether it's a hit up every now and then, just force him to run the ball.
It's hard coming off that sweep line as a fullback because you got that winger or that centre jamming you every time,
He's
and
more likely gonna
he's
pass.
forced to go quick hands every time.
Cooper Cronk on 360 said, just for him to just get into the game earlier, whether it's a run, whether it's
I
something.
think he needs to take far more carries out
He
of
took
his half and
21.
be-
He
and
took
be
21
damaging.
over the weekend, which is like by far.
Yeah, but it was like
above.
3 at half time. He had 3 runs
Yeah.
for 27 metres at half time.
Yeah, I have no doubt he'll find his rhythm throughout the season. But who was your player of the round?
My player of the round was Jacob Preston. Preston Mania.
Preston
the Bulldogs
Mania.
fan- Bulldogs
It's
fans
going,
call it.
baby.
He had a great game. He's been a try-scoring machine for the Bulldogs, and they were completely out of that game against the Cowboys until Reid Marnie just gave him a short ball and he scored the try in the 75th minute. So, impactful player. I think second rower, as you know, the Roosters, they kind of need second rowers. They wish they had him in their depth.
Well, where did he come from? Because you couldn't tell me this 21-year-old kid was going to just burst onto the scene for the Bulldogs and get picked starting round one
And
at second row.
You've spoken to Willie Mason in the preseason. You said who's been the players that have impressed you the most in the preseason. Jacob Preston was the first name out of his mouth. We saw him at Ivy. Great fellow. Great
Yeah,
bloke.
yeah, yeah.
I'm happy he's doing well, and he was one of the greatest plays of the weekend scoring that try.
Preston Mania's running wild.
Preston stats 2 tries, 1 line break, 47 of 49 tackles,
What a freak.
and 116 meters. So very
Even
impressive.
those tries, like as a second rower, chasing the kick, he's doing those little things right. And he seems like a handful for some opposition, but Preston Mania, brother. It's running wild. And we want to see him doing well.
Who was your player of the week?
My player of the week is Dom Young. Dom Young for the Newcastle Knights. He just had a field day, 4 tries. Look at some of the vision. He was giving Manly a hard time. He just skips around Ruben Garrick like he's a little kid, goes all the way, holds the fullback up. But he was everywhere. He's probably the best last tackle option in the comp, I would say.
You saw in the 79th minute of the game, they just put a kick up for Dom Young. Paul Ruben Garrick, I think, is a great player, but Dom Young made him look like his bitch. I mean, he just jumped up over him and put the ball down like he was playing an under-10s game.
Yeah, he was just having a field day with them there.
What I don't get is how he was dropped the previous 2 weeks.
Why are you dropping him? He's one of your best players. Look what he did over the weekend. Like, the Newcastle Knights have no reason to win any games with the amount of players that they have out.
No.
They're a depleted team. I mean, no Saifidi, no Kalen Ponga. And credit to Jackson Hastings. I reckon he's one of the better halfbacks in the comp. You could see how he takes control of that team. He's their go-to 7. But just, why are you dropping this kid? You need to be fielding your best team. I know he's going to the Roosters. But
Wow. You know he's only 21?
he's 21
He's
years
21.
Off the back of the World Cup,
Yeah.
off the back of having I think, a good opening round in round 1 for Newcastle, you dropped him. Okay, he's going to the Roosters, but if you're going to not play him, let him go early.
Or pick someone that you know is going to at least give a Dom Young performance.
No, but the goal of each round is to win. If you're not picking players to win that round, then you should be sacked as a coach.
Yeah.
So if you're not going to pick him, let him go and breed someone else.
A lot of people have had that argument. Gus Gould even came out. Why don't you let Suwali go early to rugby? Why don't you let Dom Young go early to the Roosters? Does the NRL need a trade period like every other sport does? NBA, NFL, AFL. Do they need a trade period so Dom Young can go over to the
Yes,
Roosters early?
especially for disgruntled players. He's not the only case of someone that's signed early. For example, Reid Marnie or Kickout last year. If they have the option to leave early and the Bulldogs or whoever other team that's getting them able to provide some compensation, then let it happen. I feel like NRL's in the Stone Age and compared to other sports of whether they have a free agency, whether they have a trade deadline. Even if they have like an EPL type transfer window, have something in place to make it interesting.
You have to weigh it up. You either have a trade period or you don't allow players to sign a year in advance because that's just getting stupid.
Yeah, like when that photo of Kickout got released last year, it was like, oh.
It's a buzzkill.
Yeah, exactly. So
And especially for a Bulldogs fan, you're like, oh, I've got to wait 12 months to see him on my team. What's going on? I don't understand.
Yeah. Well, looking at Jameon Salmon, he really shut some Canberra Raiders fans up.
I love this.
From last year. The feud was growing. The Canberra Raiders fans, and you saw Ricky Stewart. Ricky Stewart called him a weak gutted dog last year. He scores a try after Penrith really run through.
Look at him, he gets up, you weak gutted dogs. To the Canberra fans, it was awesome.
And this is what you love to see as a fan. You know, some rivalry in the game. He called them weak gutted dogs back. It's obviously
It's in good
sat
fun.
with him.
It's in good
It's
fun.
in good fun. But you got flogs in the media like Paul Kent,
Big
who
flog.
really does the bidding for Ricky Stewart on NRL 360 anytime Ricky Stewart comes up in the media. It's a bit of fun. He scores a try. Penrith Panthers bashed him. He calls them a weak gutted dog. There's really nothing in it. It's a bit of entertainment for the fans.
And what's worse is how he came out and just completely sprayed all the Penrith players, and the way Penrith handle their players. Like, bro, relax. They're back-to-back
I think he
premiers.
said Penrith just lacked class.
Yeah, he goes, there's mugs in their team, and the Penrith Panthers organisation allow them, and it's a breeding ground for them to be mugs.
I know it came out last year that Paul Kent wasn't the biggest fan of some Samoan players. I don't know if it was proven that he dislikes Samoans
No, but
or not.
it's not even that. Then he starts going to conclusions about, Penrith Panthers should have had, some vision of Jerome Luai's speech before it got out. It's like these players are allowed to have lives. They're allowed to allow us to have some entertainment in the game. Stop being a flog.
He's fucking miserable.
Yeah,
he just
but
looks
you know what? I
miserable
think
with it.
personally, I think he plays the game. He knows that that's going to be talked about. He know it's pretty much his job to just cause a bit of
just trying to
controversy on
stay
that
relevant.
show.
He's the Australian Skip Bayless, and he's just not as relevant as Skip Bayless. And I hate Skip Bayless, so it's not like being inconsistent. And even last year, though, when Ricky Stewart came out, everyone was having a go at him. I backed him and said, let him play. Everyone loves a bit of rivalry. And now Jameon Salmon's return serve. Just let it go.
Let the boys play. Let Ricky Stewart call him a weak-gutted dog, and let Salmon have a reply. We went out to the Canberra fans last year when Penrith played the Canberra Raiders at GIO Stadium, and they all called him weak-gutted dogs.
Anyway, another big highlight play from the weekend was Lachlan Miller in his defensive attempt against Hamoli Olakau'atu. Now, this is one of the funniest things you'll see from the weekend. Olakau'atu makes a line break. I think we've got vision of it here. And Lachlan Miller just backpedals the whole way to the try line.
Now, Olakau'atu makes the break on the 30-metre line. I don't know why he was so
He's
far
on the
back.
50, yeah, and he's
He's just jogging back. He doesn't even make an attempt. Now, some people come out and go, he just got a mix-up from where the 10-metre line was and the try line was. Listen, mate, he was shitting himself. I wouldn't want to tackle Hamoli Olakau'atu one-on-one. This guy is an absolute freak. He's a shoo-in for State of Origin, but he was backpedaling. He wanted no business of Olakau'atu.
some of the comments like his controller died or
I mean,
rugby league live fullback.
Even if Olakau'atu put the ball down on the 10-metre line, you were still 10 metres back from where he was at that point. Just admit you didn't want to tackle him.
Olakau'atu was just looking for a draw and pass here, and this guy just didn't want any part of
He's
him.
lucky there's a fence there.
Yeah, he was backpedaling
Yeah.
right into the fence. He didn't know where the goal line was. But one of the funnier gaffes of the week, and I'm sure it'll be the talk of the team. And next time he'll probably have a crack.
Just put your body on the line.
Speaking of Miller, he's had a breakout year so far.
I thought he was good at Cronulla before he came over to Newcastle last year. With Ponga being out or even moving to 5'8", they said this guy was going to be fullback.
Do you keep him in the team?
Listen
with
to
Ponga
these
coming back?
stats, all right? For a fill-in fullback, 1 try assist, 13 tackle breaks, 27 runs for 282 metres. Like, that's over the weekend against
Do
me.
the meters count in the back pedal from Olakau'atu?
They come off his meters.
Yeah, he's lost 10
But 13 tackle breaks, that's Teddy.
No,
Like,
I mean, the kid can play, and he's proven himself. He's given this opportunity. Where do you put him if Ponga comes back into fullback?
I think he's isn't he Olympian? He's got some
Former
sort of
Olympian.
I
Olympic
think
background.
rugby union,
Yeah.
maybe.
He's got some sort of Olympic background. But
So, yeah.
besides that play, he did have a fantastic game. You give credit where it's due.
Do you chuck him on the wing? Do you put him on the bench?
I think keep him at fullback and put Ponga back at 6. We'll give it a go. Why not?
Maybe get him to defend in the line.
Yeah.
Just to avoid any concussions for Kalen Ponga. But looking over to rugby union,
Again.
and we've put some shit on rugby union because all they do is go after rugby league
Well,
players.
the only time you talk about rugby union, especially in Australia nowadays, is when they're trying to sign a rugby league player.
Now, news have broken out that they're going after Nelson Asafa-Solomona. Eddie Jones, the coach of the Wallabies, has approached Nelson Asafa-Solomona. They've had a meeting
He's approached a Kiwi.
about him to potentially play for the Wallabies. Now, I know he's a New Zealander, but the eligibility rules for a Wallaby is very stupid. I think you just got to be in Australia for 4 years. If you live here for 4 years, you can play for the Wallabies. You could play for the Wallabies. I could play for the Wallabies. We're a resident. But the eligibility rules, that's it. He could walk onto the Wallabies.
I mean, I think most rugby league players would walk onto the Wallabies, but Asafa-Solomona, one of the most damaging players in the rugby league, I think it'd be a great signing for the Wallabies. I think what's more concerning is Eddie Jones has just made a point of saying he's going to sign rugby league players. So, okay, Suwali's going to be gone in 2025. Solomona looking likely to go. He
No,
said
I don't
Cam
think he's
Murray.
likely to go. The rumour is that he's had a meeting. I don't know if it's to up his dollars, but he's very likely to sign a 3-year extension with the Melbourne Storm.
I mean,
the thing is, he is a former rugby union player. He grew up playing rugby
knows
as
how to
well,
play.
like Suwali. So, I don't know. I think rugby union... This is the only time the media ever talks about rugby union is when they're going after a rugby league player. It seems like it's deja vu when they went after the Lottie Takiris and the Wendell Sailors,
Mark
the Matty
Gasnier.
Rogers. So, I don't know. I don't know where...
I mean, as Asafa-Solomona, if I was in his position, if the opportunity of a World Cup presents itself for rugby union, I'm going to take it. I feel like Rugby Union World Cup is one of the most prestigious sporting events, probably behind the Soccer World Cup and the Olympics. Where else do they get that many countries at an elite level?
Do they have the money to even get him after giving 1.6 million to Suoli?
And don't forget the money to Falau.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Got a question for you boys. So, if you throw 15 Kangaroo players, rugby league Kangaroo players, up against the Wallabies team, and maybe give them 6 months training, who's winning?
Wallabies would lose by 50 points. The Kangaroos would absolutely smash them. It's not even a comparison. I get there's some good rugby union athletes.
Rugby's a different sport, but I will agree with you that rugby league players are better athletes and they can easily make the transition into rugby league.
I've had this argument with people all throughout my youth because I played union and league. League players are much more athletic, they're fitter, they're more skillful. Every aspect of the game, they just beat
There's
them.
different aspects of the game, though. I'm playing devil's advocate for rugby union. Scrummaging, line-outs, learning all that. It's not like a rugby league scrum.
Say if you throw...
Learning all the breakdown and the rucks, it's a different game. There's a smaller defensive line. Like I just said, it's easier for a rugby league player to transition into rugby union. If the Wallabies were to go up against a Kangaroos, I just think it's too of a different game. But a player like an Adam Dewey or a Cameron Murray walks onto a Wallabies team.
I know there's different rules, but I reckon if you throw like a Latrell Mitchell that has no idea of any union rules whatsoever, he comes in, and he dominates.
I think the Kangaroos that just won the World Cup, anyone from their squad would walk onto the Wallabies and be their best player. And that's 1 through 17, best player in the Wallabies whole squad. So if you're just looking at that, you get 17 of the best Kangaroo players.
Well, if you go through it, Tedesco walks on.
Latrell.
Josh Adokar walks on as a winger. I mean, they love rugby league wingers. Look at our halfbacks. Nathan Cleary.
Munster.
Harry
Grant. Ben Hunt. Josh Papali. They're just walking on there. They're freak athletes. They're just
Angus
much better.
Crichton.
And to be quite honest with you, we know some rugby union players that play for the Wallabies personally. But if you ask the average person to name 5 Wallabies right now, I don't think they could.
They struggle.
Five Wallabies off the top of your head, the average person in Australia couldn't name 5 Wallabies.
But you know what? I want the Wallabies to do well in the World Cup this year that's coming up in September. So Eddie Jones, just pick whoever you want, buy whoever you want, take all the NRL players to get them.
I like the bit of controversy too. I like that there's a bit of rivalry between league and union. Go for gold. If it means rugby league players are getting more money in their pockets and you can provide that, go for it. It's a player's market.
Fair play.
I like to see it. But something that the media has harped on about all week is Shaun Johnson.
Mate, he's back in everyone's good books now.
All of a sudden, the media's just flipped on him. Start of the year, in pre-season, he's one of the shittest halfbacks. He's past his prime. All of a sudden, last 2 weeks, what he did over the weekend, coming back against Cronulla, he's taken the line on himself. He's found a bit of confidence. Everyone's jumped on the Shaun Johnson bandwagon. Are the media too fickle and just jump on and off players?
What I hate was last year, everyone was taking a shit on him. He wasn't playing the best football, but I still think he's one of the best 16 halfbacks in the comp and definitely deserves to be playing football. Everyone was calling, he should retire. The Warriors are stupid for keeping him. Like, guys, relax. He's still a first-grade player. I think a team like the Tigers, the Bulldogs, who are looking for halfbacks, they're kicking themselves that they never signed him. He's having a purple patch of football now, but media, give him a break.
Is that a term, purple patch?
Yeah, it's definitely a term. Look it up if you want, Joe.
Okay, yeah.
But teams like the Tigers are now rumoured to be signing him because they're looking for a halfback. It's like, okay, you guys are a bit late to the party. Yeah, exactly.
He's on 500K for the year.
Yeah.
Which I think is, like, for a halfback, for your star halfback.
What I got to say, there's no more quality 7s anymore. Like, you can count them on one hand. So for him, who's an experienced NRL player, I don't think you can just ever write him off. He's skillful.
And I don't want to.
He's very evasive.
I don't want to join the party of just jumping on the bandwagon and praising him, but like, just be consistent.
You've
with
always
it.
said he's a solid player, and any team should welcome him.
And I just think it's nice that he's getting his flowers now, but just when he maybe does have a bad game this year, don't completely abandon ship. That's all I'm saying. I just hate when the media does that. I'd like to call it out.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Tigers, like you said, there's no quality halves in the market. They're looking at trying to send Mitchell Pearce a text message over in England and paying the international text message fees to try and get him over to the Tigers. They are very desperate to try and change something. A player like Shaun Johnson is one of the quality 7s in the half, no matter how you look at it. Just how he plays, his ball playing ability, just how he breaks a game open sometimes. He can be a game-changing player.
That's 2 weeks in a row now against the Bulldogs and the Sharks where he's won them the game. And you can't argue that.
If Luke Brooks goes to a team, touching on the Tigers, because you're saying they're looking for a half, if he goes to a team like the Roosters or Melbourne.
Top 5 half in the comp.
Man, he's close to Dally M.
I rate him.
I wouldn't go as far as Dally M, but I definitely say that he's a quality half and he's just stuck in a shit team. I hope that somehow he gets to Melbourne. I think he was rumoured to go there
Because I'm just saying,
time.
every week on Twitter, on Instagram, all the comments, get rid of Brooks, put him back into New South Wales Cup, get rid of Dewey. The fans don't actually, I don't think they comprehend that there's not many quality sevens in the game. Like, you could throw Wakeham in there and give him a go. You can put a younger seven like a Simpkin in there and give him a go. What are you going to expect? Is he going to do something that Luke Brooks can't do?
Anyway, on the topic of the West Tigers,
Dane
Dane
Laurie.
Laurie. Funniest story of the weekend. Please give us a little preview as to what happened.
Well, Dane Laurie has liked an Instagram post of Selwyn Cobbo's Instagram. He's like an Instagram post of Selwyn Cobbo's intercept try.
Against the Tigers.
It was against the Tigers. Dane Laurie's been dropped, and they're saying it's a bad look for Dane Laurie to like this post of Selwyn Cobbo scoring a try against his team.
Fox Sports was absolutely spraying him. And, like, again, media, give the guy a break. I like the post. There's nothing wrong with just liking an intercept try.
He's just appreciating good rugby league from Selwyn Cobbo.
I'm pretty sure they both played together for Indigenous All-Stars this year.
Yeah, so that could be mates. He's just appreciating good quality work from a good friend.
So is Fox Sports just policing every like on Instagram now? Is this going to be a story?
I mean, it's probably not the smartest thing considering you're on the opposing team of the player that scored. But again, does it really matter? Is he coming out and saying, I'm really happy the Tigers lost and he scored? No, he's just saying, hey, this is a good play by Selwyn.
Well, he's out of favour with the Tigers. He hasn't been named in the team the last few weeks, or he's been coming off the bench.
He didn't get named this week.
He's not named this week, so it does look a little bit bitter, but, I mean, it's an Instagram like. Are you just going to start policing players' likes now? Are they not allowed to just have free reign over social media?
I don't know, did the NRL post it? Maybe he's just supporting the NRL. Like, share, subscribe. He's just following the formula.
I hope he's following this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I think it's very petty. I think he ends up at another club by the end of the year,
I think
be honest with you.
Jaden mentioned it the other week. Parramatta are looking for an X Factor. He does fall into that category of fullback kind of X Factor player that they're looking for. So I definitely think he can easily go to the Parramatta Eels. Maybe mid-season, who knows?
Yeah, but then what do you do with Gutho if he does go there?
Go to centre, go to wing.
Gutho could play centre. I mean, he's one of the best defensive fullbacks in the
That's the
comp.
only
I
reason
wouldn't
why I
move
wouldn't-
him from fullback.
You wouldn't want to move him because of his defensive capabilities.
Yeah, but if you sign a Jack Wyden, where are you going to play Jack Wyden? In
I'd
the
play
halves?
Jack- I'd
No.
play Jack
you'd
Wyden
have
at
to.
centre.
You'd move Gutho from fullback.
Like
Oh,
he's-
Jack Wyden.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Maybe even sack
Big
Dylan
body at the
Brown.
back.
Well, on the topic of poor social media etiquette, the West Tigers social media team are struggling. They're having an absolute shocker. And I want to shout out
The casual athlete.
the casual athlete on TikTok. He pointed this out, and you can see we've got the highlight here. They've had an absolute horrid run. It started off very
secure the win at home,
very
yeah.
enthusiastic of round one, the Tigers, of the full-time wrap-up with the captions, and it's just slowly going from worse to worse. You could see the captions, it's just gone from
Couldn't secure the win.
couldn't
at home.
secure the win to full-time score to then just FT full stop. Next week, I don't think they're going to have a caption when they lose to Parramatta, and I think they may as well just deactivate their account if they go 0-9 or something.
It's progressively getting worse. They're running out of words to say. I do feel sorry for them. They probably had an arsenal of words to use for losses throughout the season. They didn't expect to use all 6 in the first 6 weeks. So I think once they lose to Para, they're just going to go full-blown, deactivate the account, maybe reactivate when they win a game.
Can you blame the social media team though? Like, what are you supposed to talk about when your team is losing by 40 points to Brisbane, or just you're 0-5? Like, what are you supposed to do?
Well, I just think maybe...
If you're getting berated by your fans in the comments, do you acknowledge it? Do you apologise to them? Do you just say, give us time? What do you do?
Bring back Tiger Town so that you give the fans
Something to be
an
distracted
idea
by.
of what's happening behind the scenes.
Because the CEO is getting absolutely trashed right now for his etiquette in
And
the
he-
change
you
room.
know what he did?
His etiquette at training is on the phone. It looks like he doesn't care.
He just came out and did a Wolf of Wall Street and just said, I'm not fucking leaving. He just said, he just goes, look, I know things aren't good, but I'm not leaving. I'm going to get things right. So whether he's the man for the job or not, I don't know. I don't really know what goes on in his role, but they need to do something. There needs to be some sort of change. I don't want to sack the coaches because I feel good had said, you're 1 year into a 5-year rebuild. Give them some time. The quality of football has been poor, but give them till the end of the season at least to show signs of life.
But
When you're losing, when you're losing, the media will find anything to take a shit on. Whether it's Benji sending Mitchell Pearce a text and not telling the rest of the coaching staff, or it's you know, who are they going to pick for next week? They're in a shambles. Or it's this CEO story that he just doesn't care, and look at his body language in the change rooms.
Did you hear about Mitch Pearce's response as well?
Yeah, Buzz Rothfield revealed his response of saying, hey, I'm at Catalans. We're going to win a premiership here. We're first on the table. I don't want to go to the Tigers. I mean, it's a pretty sensible response, and I don't blame him. But, you know, it's going to be very hard for a Tigers to recruit some quality players with the way they're going. Because they recruited an Api Koroisau and Isaiah Papali'i, and they look like they've gotten worse.
Anyway, let's move on to the next segment.
Top five. Our top five each week, where we give our top five of any given subject. Can be across NRL, can be across Australian sports or international sports. This week's top five is top five most valuable Australian sports teams in Australia. Top five Australian sports teams. Starting off with Carlton. Now, Carlton is valued at $92 million in revenue.
They've produced $92 million.
Okay, yeah, so we're going to break this down over revenue. It was very hard to find because I think there were only like 2013 figures done by like
valuations.
Of valuations. So we're going to break it down by revenue of each team. Starting with Carlton, $92 million in revenue. And you'll know it. We called it out last week. When Collingwood and Carlton go up against each other, they have the craziest fans. Probably have one of the highest membership bases in the AFL. So Carlton at number 5 with $92 million in revenue.
I think what is going to be a trend throughout this list and what people call out Carlton for is they've got a big pokie machine base at their fan club.
Okay.
So I think that's
gaming is a big factor with revenue
I feel
across
like
all these teams.
People have called out Carlton for this in the past, but that's what you can't blame them for having money. That's where they produce revenue, whether it's from on-game, on-field production or whether it's from gaming. And that brings us to number 4, another rich team in the AFL, Richmond, who in 2022 had $92 million in revenue as well. Now, that could be on the back of winning 3 out of 4 premierships over the last, 4 or 5 years. They're one of the greatest teams in the AFL. And I think on the back of that, they've been able to produce good financial results. And they're probably one of the most valuable teams in Australian sports. So seeing them at number 4 is no surprise.
Number 3 is the Parramatta Eels. That's right. The Parramatta Eels at $102 million in revenue. Now, again, this has got a massive portion of this is gaming and Parramatta Leagues. They love the pokies down there, but it's also one of the strongest membership bases in the NRL. They've got a bit, not that they've been the most successful club, but they have loyal fans coming off the back of a grand final. $102 million in revenue. Parramatta Eels number 3.
At number 2, our team, the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs, at $120 million in revenue.
$121 million.
Which I was very surprised to see because they haven't been the best team over the last 10 years. I think it's another case of the pokies being a big driver.
That's Tato at Canterbury League. He's contributed to that.
Tato is contributing to that figure. I have probably contributed to that figure as well. But seeing them at number 2 is nice. It maybe using that money to build Belmore up or maybe get it to a point where they can host more games. They've got the money, obviously. Their financial results are showing that. But seeing them at 2 is pleasantly surprising.
And with the Bulldogs, I think they had a record year in terms of membership as well.
Yeah.
So
they're on the up.
They are on the up for a team that hasn't been crazily successful over the last decade. But number 1 is another NRL team. It is the Penrith Panthers at $151 million. Now, Gus Gould can pick his clubs. Going from number 1 to number 2, he knows follow the pokies. The Penrith Panthers being a successful team, having a very strong Penrith Leagues club, I think what they pretty much own Penrith as a region.
Yeah.
They have one of the best junior bases in the NRL, and it's no surprise they have $151 million in revenue.
I know people will say this is the Pokies, but they've been the best on-field team for the last 3 years. Back-to-back grand finals, 3 grand finals in a row. They've produced the best quality of football. They've got the best players. Everyone's trying to grab their talent. I mean, I'm surprised I didn't see more AFL teams on this list. I thought maybe like West Coast Eagles or even Collingwood would be on this list. But NRL teams seem to have a lot of the money.
This is revenue, so it's not in terms of profit, but this is how much they turn over as a business. And to see Penrith Panthers up top ahead of big AFL teams is pretty impressive. I think Rugby Union came out last week and said, players want to play all over the world. Not in Penrith. Penrith is one of the most successful rugby league teams and sporting franchises in Australia.
It surprises me that Sydney Swans isn't on this list. Like, Sydney Swans have more members than they do seats available at the SFS.
And they get a lot of government grants, and that was a big factor in Penrith's revenue. They
Yeah.
had a
But even
big
then-
15 million government grant.
Very surprising not to see any Super Rugby teams on there.
Oh, it is. I want to point out there doesn't seem to be any rugby teams on this list.
I was scouring through the top 15,
There's no
top 20.
Waratahs or anything in your top 5 because no one watches.
I don't think
rugby
Super
in
Rugby
Australia.
as a whole would make this list. To tell you the truth. So,
Well, I mean, total AFL figures from revenue. I think AFL's at about 900 million, NRL at 500 million. So AFL clubs are largely successful as a whole, but individually NRL outpaced them.
And AFL compared to NRL, revenue far exceeds
Yeah.
it by I think it's a couple hundred million.
No, it's 400 million.
Yeah, that's quite a bit. But on AFL week 4, Nick, what's the game of the week?
Game of the week is Collingwood versus the Brisbane Lions. Another Collingwood blockbuster, I think, on Friday night. They've packed out the MCG the last 4 weeks or 3 weeks.
Record crowds.
Record crowds through the first 4 rounds. I think it'll be another tight game. Collingwood, everyone's calling them the Flag Pies. I'm calling them the Flag
It's
Pies.
this year. This is their year.
This
I
year-
will go
this
down
is
for the
our
AFL
year.
Grand Final.
It is our year this year. But big thing coming out of last week was Geelong losing to Gold Coast.
They're having a shocker. opening
Absolutely
season.
disgusting. They're the first premiership team to go 0-3 the following year.
Cost them multi. So.
Cost me a multi as well, so I'm probably a bit filthy because of that. But I'm just very surprising. Even watching the game, they look disgusting out there. Their level of play was so poor. They made Gold Coast
I
look
took
good.
Port Adelaide as well at $1.70.
That was an Adelaide derby. It's a tough
Yeah, I
bet
know.
to take.
You said not to take when they're going up against Adelaide, but you just think they'd be a sure thing. They're the better team across the
Yeah.
park.
I mean, but that's right. Looking forward to this week as well. Geelong are going to be desperate for a win,
and they've got Hawks.
and they've got Hawthorn.
Are
who
they the favourites?
Geelong are the favourites. Hawthorn are terrible. They got their first win last week. But just Geelong, I don't know what it is. Maybe they've got Joel
Surely
Selwood
they don't
retiring.
go 0-4.
I mean, I'm going to put the house on them to win this week. It's a home game, so I think they should, or at least they're playing in Melbourne, so they should not lose this game.
Yeah, MCG.
And if they do lose this game, I'll probably never tip them again, and I'll hope they miss the 8. I'll completely death ride them.
Well, that's the AFL. We've got a blockbuster Collingwood game again this week. Looking at our NRL picks and tips for the round, we'll be doing these every week between Rich, my dad, my tips and your tips. First game of the week, another massive game and a tough one to tip this Thursday, Melbourne versus the Roosters in Melbourne at Amy Park. Who are you tipping?
I'm tipping the Melbourne Storm. I think losing to Desco for that 11-day rule is going to hurt. Yes, they get Manu back, but Melbourne get Jarome Hughes back, and they just looked so good last week. And given the games in Melbourne, I think you're stupid not to tip Melbourne.
I think with Tedesco out, he's got to take the mandatory 11 days off. And Melbourne having all their players back, I'm going to take Melbourne as well. In Melbourne, I don't see him losing this game.
And Dad's taking Melbourne as well, so it's, great minds think alike.
We're
Are
all
you
taking
surprised to see Manu at fullback and not Suali'i?
I think they'll swap in the game. I would probably go with Manu as the more senior player. He played fullback for New Zealand in the World Cup. You got to give it to the more senior player. It's just like a nod of respect.
I don't think Suali'i is their best option for fullback too. When he sums up things, he looked great on the back end of that game last
He's only
last
19.
week, filling in for Teddy. But I just feel like he doesn't sum up coming out the back that well. Whether to go long, short. Sometimes he opts to hold the ball. Manu's been there. He's done that. He did it for New Zealand. I think it's the right option. But you're right. We could see them switching. Friday night, we've got the Good Friday game, the Bulldogs versus the Rabbitohs.
As much as it pains me to say, as a Bulldogs fan, they got too many players out. Rabbitohs are going to win this game convincingly, 13+. Latrell to score a try, have a great game.
Tavita Totola back for Souths as well, who's
That's a
big
big in from a knee injury too. I thought he was going to be a bit more longer
I
on
think
the sideline.
Taylor Mariner's not playing for the Bulldogs.
They've
Franklin
got
Pele.
I think 11 of their regular first graders out. These are front rowers. They're asking for a special exemption from the NRL to get some Jersey flag players to come up. So I'm going to say there's no chance the Bulldogs are winning this week, as much as it pains me to say it. Could they pull off a surprise upset like they did last week in a golden point, SHAUN from Matt Burton? I don't think it's going to be the case. Latrell's going to be in for a big one. I'm taking the Rabbitohs. Richard has taken the Rabbitohs as well. So it's going to be a big game. The second game on Friday is the Cowboys versus the Dolphins.
Got some big ins for the Cowboys. So you've got Ruben Cotter back, Scott Drinkwater back.
Yeah.
So
And Dolphins are struggling. They got both their Milford and O'Sullivan out, so they're down to their third string halfback.
Nicarima's back for him though.
Yeah, I think he's probably still suffering from that head knock from Gilbert.
Big knock.
So I'll take the Cowboys. Drinkwater transforms that side, and I think they'll be pretty filthy after last week losing to the Bulldogs.
We're all taking the Cowboys here with some big ins. We've got Panthers versus the Manly Seagulls.
I think this is probably game of the week. Manly coming off that draw with Schuster back will try and maybe pony up and try and cause an upset, but Penrith will look too good here. I think what's concerning is Martin and Garner are still out. but talent across the park.
Fisher Harris is out as well for the week.
Fisher Harris,
That's a big loss.
And Jason Saab's back with his...
Hey, those-
Saab finally back, fellow Cedar.
Those Lebanese genetics getting you back early.
Nah, it's good to see Saab back.
7.5 months after an ACL. It's
ACL
record
injury?
time,
That's
yeah.
like unprecedented. But even with saying that, I think Penrith, you can't tip
Well, you've
against
been
them.
seeing Saab putting the work. He's been going doing the Pilates. He's been sweating. He's been working with Roger Fabry as well, sprinting. He must be back in full flight if they're getting him in there after seven months off. But I'm going to take the Panthers as well. I think they're going to be too convincing. The Sea Eagles, I feel like they haven't been that convincing in their attack.
Nah.
And with Cooper Johns going in and out and Schuster being in and out, I think they'll be better than they were last week, but I think Penrith gets it done. Broncos or the Raiders?
Broncos. At home, Reece Walsh is firing. Take the Broncos.
Broncos, and I think we're taking Broncos
You
all
see,
round as well.
Jared Croker's back for Canberra.
I think that makes me want to tip the Broncos more.
Yeah, Jared Croker, I don't know if he's a game-breaking centre. He's reliable.
Isn't he coming back from a shoulder injury?
Yeah, did you guys hear about his shoulder injury? What happened?
Shoulder injury last year.
Last year, yeah, he went to grab the TV remote and popped his shoulder out, and he was out for the year. Yeah, Channel 7 headline: Canberra Raiders legend Jared Croker's career under threat after TV remote injury.
Yeah, I think if you can't grab the remote without injuring yourself, you probably shouldn't be playing in the NRL. So Brisbane 13 plus now.
How are you going to go up against a Herbie Farnworth
Katoni Staggs.
if you can't, or Katoni Staggs, if you can't reach and grab the remote without doing your shoulder?
Katoni Staggs is going to fend him, throw him off like a child, and break both his shoulders.
Our Sunday game is the Titans versus the Dragons.
He's just so tough.
There's a few outs for the Titans, big outs. So AJ Brimson, Kieran Foran both got injured in their last game.
I'm just going to go the Titans. It's a 50-50 game.
I disagree.
They're at home. I'll take the Titans.
Well, Dad's taking the Titans as well. I'm going to take the Dragons. I think they did enough last week. They're going to start to gel. Ben Hunt leading the way. With too many outs for the Gold Coast Titans. I'm going
This
Dragons.
This is the second game into the 6-week career on the line for Anthony Griffin. So he's got
They played
points
each other
to
in round one, and Dragons, I think, won by 20.
And we've
So-
got
Round two?
3 Sunday games. Next Sunday game, not the best game. Knights
one's
versus the
on Monday.
Warriors.
Knights versus the Warriors. I've taken Newcastle. Not as a very convincing pick. I just think Warriors, they've won too many games. It's just time for them to lose.
I don't know. I think they're going to ride the momentum.
The game's in
Everyone's jumping on
Newcastle.
board. The game is in Newcastle. Newcastle, a lot of troops out. They still seem to be getting it done. But I'm going to ride the Sean Johnson wave. I'm going to take the Warriors. Richard has taken the Knights.
Okay, we've tipped the same
A bit
so
of
far.
confidence in the Knights. I want to go a bit different. You're leading tips by 2. I'm going to take the Dragons. It's a bit different from you. And I'm taking the Warriors. Last game of the round, Tigers versus Eels. We just interviewed Tim Manor. Timmy Manor's riding off the Tigers. He thinks
He says he feels sorry for
He
them.
feels sorry for them. They're in an absolute form slump. He thinks the Eels does this comfortably, coming off a loss. So I'm going to take the Eels as well. Who are you taking?
I'm taking the Eels, but he did say that last year they just played down to their opposition. When you don't expect them, also when you do expect the Eels to win, they somehow bottle it. So be wary of that, but take the Eels here. Easter Monday, they'll win.
And the Sharks have a bye this week. They get the week off. But looking around the globe, big UFC card this week. There seems to be bigger UFC cards coming up. Now, I know I said at the top of the show, WWE is more popular, but it is a great card. We've got Adesanya, looking to prove himself. I think this is their, 4th fight?
4th fight, yeah. So twice in kickboxing.
3 times
where-
in kickboxing.
No, twice. Twice in kickboxing, once in the UFC, and then this is number 4. So Pereira's won all 3 in the past.
And if you look at their last fight, Adesanya did dominate for 4 of the rounds. He caught him on
Give you a prediction. Adesanya or Pereira, who's winning?
I'm going Pereira, strictly because I saw a TikTok of John Jones relaying the fight, and he just says, once an athlete has another athlete's number, it just continues like that, and there's nothing that Adesanya can do. Pereira's going to knock him out.
Jones had with Cormier, and I think that's the same thing. As much as I want to see Adesanya finally get one back, and I just think Pereira's gonna do the job. I think he's the favourite for a reason.
Jaden, you're our UFC expert. What's your tip?
I'm saying Izzy. He's dominated one of the kickboxing fights. Izzy should have won, in my opinion. The last UFC fight, he got very unlucky.
I just think
knockout.
I saw a training video. Not that we should bet off training videos, but that Pereira,
yeah,
he just
He
looks
looks like a
monstrous.
Brazilian killer.
He looks
Yeah.
like he could kill someone.
If I had to go,
How they're in the same weight class, I don't understand.
Yeah, look, Izzy if Izzy loses this, I think he retires.
Calls it a quits.
He's 33 years old. He's the biggest star. Like,
there's
he's
too
got the
much
most
money.
money.
There's too much money on the table.
And he said
especially-
himself he loves fighting, so he's just got
Yeah,
to.
but
Hey,
there's
I feel
no-
like
there's
he
no
could
more
still
title
look to
runs.
go up a weight division. I know he's done it before and lost, but I don't know. There's too much money on the table for him to call it
He
a day.
should retire.
Someone who came out and said if they lose this week, they will retire. Jorge Masvidal up
should-
against Burns. If he loses this fight this week, he'll call it a day.
in his hometown.
He's lost way too many fights. Losing to Covington, he probably should have retired after that. He got embarrassed. Okay, maybe he saved face, sucker punching him afterwards. But he just gets outclassed. He had that good run against Bran Askren where he kind of put himself back on the map. But he's just not up to par with these other great fighters. Gilbert Burns is going to knock his head off. And that's
Yeah.
because Gilbert Burns, you saw what he did to Khamzat Chimaev. If you can keep up with him, you're going to absolutely obliterate someone like Jorge.
I guess we'll wait and see. And we've seen how he does on the streets with Colby. I don't know if he can do it in the octagon.
I don't think that was by himself though with Colby.
He did jump him, and that could have been Bob Menery's fault. Even though we spoke to Menery, he said it wasn't him.
It's not his fault.
But moving on to basketball in the NBA, the Dallas Mavericks. Will they even make the playoffs or the play-in? Ever since they've gotten Kyrie Irving, it looks like they've just fallen out of form. I don't think they make it.
They're not going to make it, which is shit because I've jumped on the bandwagon. I'm a big Kyrie fan and I'm a big Luka fan, so seeing them struggle is tough.
Mate, you'd think together they'd be one of the most dangerous duos in the NBA.
I mean, it's not Kyrie's fault. Everyone's putting blame on Kyrie for their bad record since he's joined, but his stats have been great. He's shooting over 50%, averaging over 25 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists. They've been 7 and 11 since he's joined, but the problem's been defense. Luka himself has come out and said, offensively, they've got no problems. But when you're giving up 130 points a night, you're just not going to win. So whether they make it, they need a few results to go their way. They're a game behind OKC.
There's a few people on the borderline of the play-in and making the 8th seed.
Yeah,
the
so
Lakers being one as well. I don't know if they will crack it.
Lakers are going to make. They probably won't even make. They'll make the play-in definitely.
Are
Whether
they
they can get
guaranteed
up
for the play-in?
Yeah, they'll guarantee make the play-in.
You've got Clippers on 41 wins, Pels on 40, Lakers 40, Timberwolves
It's very
39,
tight.
OKC
So,
38
I think-
and 37. So
They've got 42 losses now, Dallas. They'll need to actually just probably win out, end the season on 42 and 42, or whatever it is, 41, 42.
And maybe make the
And hope OKC lose. OKC have Golden State coming up, which is a very realistic loss for them.
With Wiggins on the way back.
Yeah, but they've got OKC has the tiebreak over Dallas, so they'll need them to lose an extra game for them to make it. But you never know. They've been
Looking
unlucky.
at something else that was on in LA, WrestleMania 39, we touched on it at the top. Spectacle of a show. Shane McMahon makes his return to have an impromptu match against The Miz. He comes out within 2 minutes, tears his quad. Like father, like son. He just tried to do a simple leapfrog and his quad just gives up on him. He tries to get back up, falls down to the mat. He was finished. The Miz didn't know what to do. Snoop Dogg had to call an audible and give The Miz the people's elbow. But you'd think after all these years, Shane McMahon putting his body on the line, jumping off Hell in a Cells, jumping off stages with Stevie Blackman. Look at Shane here. Just
That's at
jumping
least-
off the stage.
That's 50 feet in the air at Backlash, and he walks off that like nothing happened.
shakes it off. Yeah,
He's
does a
gone
leapfrog.
through glasses
Here we
with
go,
belly to belly
off the Hell in a
suplexes.
Cell, bang. Yeah, that takes 10 years off your life, but doesn't tear your quad. I don't know how that happens.
Well, you compare it to the classic Vince McMahon tearing both his quads walking out into the Royal Rumble. It's great to see Shane fill his father's shoes and do this on the biggest stage at WrestleMania.
Some great family genetics. in the quads.
Like father, like son. Just once you hit a certain age, your quads
Is
are
that
just
it
gonna
for
tear.
Shane McMahon? One quad gone, you're never coming back to wrestling?
Well, you've seen Triple H come back from a quad tear, and he came back bigger and better. So maybe there's something in the water that they give him in the WWE where he's going to come back with a stronger quad. But it's just painful to see that this is what finally got him. I've seen Kurt Angle belly to belly suplex him onto
Through
his
glass,
head,
and he fell on his head. That was terrible.
and he's walked that off like nothing happened. So I mean, you just never know when your time's
would
going to
you
come.
would you like to see him in the UFC?
I mean, now that they're under one umbrella, he can throw hands. He's actually trained in Muay Thai and boxing. So I guess we'll see. But thoughts and prayers go out to Shane McMahon's
God
quad.
bless you, Shane.
And that brings us to the end of the show. Make sure you keep an eye out on our socials for our tips this week and our multi on Picklebet socials and at Jon-Bernard K. But thank you for tuning along. We'll be back next week, Tuesday live on YouTube at 5 p.m. But thank you for tuning in and all the best for the week.